Yasu students, today we're going to talk about solving equations with addition and subtraction. It's pretty straightforward. For every problem where there's a variable, our whole goal is to find what that variable equals. So in this case we have y plus 14 equals 20. Remember, the idea is we only want to know what y equals. So there are only a few things that we're going to think about when we do this. In this case, how do we make a positive 14 change to 0? Well, we subtract 14, and we just have to do that on both sides of equal sign. Now, in this case, it's a very simple problem. 20 minus 14 gives us 6, and we have our answer, y equals 6. Let's take a look at a problem where there are some decimals. Everyone loves decimals. So in this case, our goal is to get m by itself. In the end, we want m equals. Now, how do we do this? Well, to get started, we need to subtract 5.8 from both sides of the equal sign. Remember, you do the same thing on both sides of the equal sign. Why? What happens here is positive 5.8 minus 5.8, of course, gets us 0. And anytime we have a 0, we don't need to write that. And it accomplishes our goal. We get down to just an m. Now, on the other side, we have a positive minus a negative number. Remember, for all these problems, the way to determine whether the answer is positive or negative is you pick the bigger number, and that will tell you the sign. And then you subtract the smaller from the bigger. So 5.8 minus 2.9. Remember, when you are subtracting or adding decimals, you just follow this down. This will give you your decimal place. And then you just do subtraction as normal. We have to borrow. We get 18, so 18 minus 9 is 9. 4 minus 2 is 2. And we know our answer is negative 2.9. Remember, you don't have to write a plus 0. You can just go straight down to m equals negative 2.9. So there we go. Okay, let's take a quick look at this example where we have x minus 120 equals 80. Of course, if we have a negative number here and we want to make it go to 0, we have to add a positive number, of course. So this goes to 0. We do the same thing on both sides of the equal sign. That's always going to happen. Same thing on both sides. And we get 200. So x equals 200. Beautiful. Now, let's take a look at this problem here. We have some more decimals. And in this case, our variable, what we're trying to get to, is on the right side. So, it doesn't matter. Right or left side, it's the same ideas. We will just be trying to get down to just a y. And to do this, we have a negative. So in this case, we're going to have to add 0.9 to both sides. And that, of course, goes to 0. We don't even have to write it down. And we're going to add 0.9 on this side. In this case, we have addition. We have a positive plus a positive. So it's a lot easier. So 2.8 plus 0.9, we get 17, and we get 3. Remember, bring your decimal straight down, and there we go. There's our answer. So 3.7 equals y. So let's take a look at a couple more examples. The first we'll look at is 2 equals f plus 1/5. So we have a whole number and a 2 and, of course, a fraction here. Anytime you have a fraction, I'm going to suggest that you set it up and do all of your work kind of side by side with fractions. Because if you have, let's say, 1/5 minus 2/5, that is a lot easier to understand than if you kind of do it something like top down. It's just hard to do with fractions in this sense. Let's get started with the problem. All right, now we want to make the 1/5 go to 0 so that we will have just f equals something. And to do that, I'm just going to kind of write it out. So we'll say 2 minus 1/5. We're going to do the same thing on both sides of the equal sign. So we have positive 1/5, and there's our minus 1/5. So of course this will go to 0, and we'll have this math problem on the other side. So in order to finish this off, we need a common denominator. So if we want our common denominator to be a 5, well, we need to make this 10/5 minus 1/5, and that equals f. And then we do our math. Remember, you're always just looking at the numerators All right, so 10 minus 1, and in this case we get 9/5. So you really have to take your time, but this is what I mean. You want to write fractions, even when you have whole numbers and fractions, kind of side by side so that you can figure out the common denominators in an easier fashion. All right, let's take a look at this second example. 4/7 plus p equals -5/2. Well, same idea. We want p equals, I'll write it down here. And how do we do this? Well, we have to make this 4/7 go to 0. So if we do that, we'll say 4/7 minus 4/7, right, plus b equals -5/2, and then we have minus 4/7. So this goes bye-bye, that just goes to 0, and we're left with p. I'm going to erase this for now. So p equals, now here we have a denominator of a 2 and a denominator of 7. The only common denominator, or the lowest common denominator I can think of is, of course, 14. So 2 times 7 is 14, 5 times 7 is 35. Now, it is a negative, so we have to make sure we continue this as a negative. And on the other side, we have minus, so we'll leave that. We'll change the denominator to 14. 7 times 2 is 14. So 4 times 2 is 8. So in this case, we have a negative minus something, okay? And that means we have two negatives, so we have p equals negative what? 35 in this case. Remember, anytime you have like -2 minus 4, that equals what? Well, you add the numbers, keep the negative sign. So in this case, we have 35 plus 8, so that's going to be 43. So -43 over 14. You carry the negative sign all the way through. So there we go. You just have to be careful, take your time. Good luck.